You were involved at one time in AIM, is that right? So now you're doing albums. How do those things connect up for you?
The connection to me is I'm basically still saying what's on my mind, right? And that to me is the real connection. I'm still headed out doing what I was doing, saying, communicating whatever it is I see or feel. And I mean, whether it was from the AIM days and the politically organized days, that's basically what I was doing, right? And now working with music and performance, writing. It's still, that to me is what it is.
Does it rankle you to have to do things like, for instance, a publicity call like this? Is that something like a necessary evil?
No. When I was working back in the political days, in the political forum and structure, I learned then is, like, you got to talk to people, say what it is, right? If that's what you're doing, right? And so I don't know. No, I don't look at it as a necessary evil. I mean, it's not something I want to do every day, all the time. But in time and places, put it together, yes, no, I have no problem with it. And I don't really consider it as, I think, if we're going to talk about evils, I don't think that this is one of them, right?
Well, people now come to see you because you're, in one way, an entertainment figure. But you feel like you're getting your message across anyhow.
Yeah, well, I mean, how would I put this? See, because, when I was working politically, I mean, I was consciously trying to deliver a message, right? I mean, that's what that was all about. But what I'm doing now, the only message I'm really trying to convey is to think clearly, try to see coherently, and say what you feel. If there's any message, that's what it is, because I've pretty much given up on any idea that America itself, or this whole way of life that's going on, I've pretty much given up on any idea that it's going to come around to any real morality or validity. Just a big parasite going to continue to feed on people, and we do need to express our truths. Maybe a way of defending ourselves from that.
How do you see the Native American situation today? Are things improving?
Let's get into some definition here.
Okay.
All right. Number one, Native American. A Native American is everybody that was born in the nation-state America. And so let's look at the nation-state America and that definition of Native Americans. Are things getting better for them? I mean, are things getting better for the blacks, the Hispanics, the working class? Are things getting better for the women, the poor, the old? I don't think so, right? See, so no, I don't think things are getting better for the Native Americans under that definition, right? As for the tribes and the indigenous tribes, right? The so-called Indians, no, things aren't getting any better. If they're not getting better for the larger society, they're not going to get better for us. That's the example and behavior of democratic history.
You see the tribal situation as being just a part of the cross-section of America, then?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like this. History is that if America is going to mistreat its citizens, right, the ones it depends upon, its workers, so to speak, its peasants, right, then it's not going to treat us any better. It's going to always treat us worse than them. That's history, right? I mean, that's how America came to be America.
By mistreatment?
Plain out, let's just say plain genocide and aggression and bad behavior. I mean, mistreatment's kind of a kind word in that.
Well, let's turn it around. You were mentioning the morality earlier. What kind of morality would you like to see? What kind of values are important to you, I guess?
Value should be placed upon life rather than material.
Which is the exact opposite of where we're at.
In America, it's all material. Yeah. Have no respect for life. I mean, you wouldn't have racism and sexism, right? You wouldn't have the classism and the ageisms and that whole disregard, Your health care wouldn't be dependent upon how much profit someone's going to make, things like that. So obviously there is no emphasis on life. That morality is not about life. They may speak it and say the words, but the actions, go all against that.
Would you say that, for instance, AIM at any time was confused? Do you think every organization goes through something like that?
We all go through learning processes, right? So we never have all the answers, right? And I think that yes, we've all been confused as individuals. If you then if we get together, we'll be confused.
Maybe that's the thing to share, huh?
Yeah, the confusion. That's what produces the contradictions. But if we're willing to look at the contradictions and accept the contradictions, then we can learn from the contradictions and resolve some as we create new ones. That's evolving. That's evolving our thought process, our coherency, right? And that's creating the power. That's creating the ability, all right, to influence in a healthy, positive way the change that must take place on this continent.
And so one way to that is some kind of clarity, which you were mentioning earlier.
Oh yes, no, it's like we are programmed to be incoherent, right? Because we have intelligence, all right? Now, any real intelligent being that sees clearly what's going on is not going to accept it. Those who feed off of us and manipulate us, this predator class of people, they know very well that as long as the mass of people are confused, all right, and distorted, their perceptions are distorted, and distorted with racism and bigotry and hatred, sexism, ageism, distorted with self-doubt and insecurity. They know that, and frustration. They know that as long as the mass is distorted in this way, it cannot see clearly. And if it cannot see clearly, it cannot act coherently. And then the system can perpetuate, the predator system can perpetuate itself. The danger to them is when people start to think clearly and see coherently, right? And then act upon that understanding. Then the system changes, all right? And that's the reality of it. So they're very much afraid of that. So yes, generally, and none of us are immune to it, right? It's like a disease. We've all been affected. But it doesn't make us inoperable, Doesn't mean we can't go on and make our contributions or anything. It just means that, it's just like a disease that lives in the mind.
There's a lot of that confusion around, television, radio.
It's deliberately programmed. I mean, you look at the respectability that advertising has, all right? I mean, it's an accepted, respectable norm in America. Well, in the free world, everywhere, I guess. But now, in reality, what that is, that is a promotion of the material moral and an attack against the spiritual moral. Because what it's doing is it's telling you have no validity unless you consume these things. See? So, I mean, it's like being slapped in the face psychically every morning when we get up.
That's schizophrenia.
That's right. It's every radio station we listen to, every TV station we watch, continually. Our spirit, it's almost like subliminals. The spirit, our essence, is being attacked through our conscious mind. So then, therefore, that will always keep us on the defensive, out of balance, because it's very important, right, to the whole predator class that runs America, all right. Well, I mean, runs the civilized world and the technologic civilized world, actually. But it's very important to that predator class that we stay out of sync.
Do you think that's the power of rock and roll, is to be able to, some people are able to cut through that kind of thing, that confusion?
I always look at it in terms of that's the potential power, not political. That's the potential power of rock and roll. It's always the potential power, right? But that's right. And historically speaking, we live in a time now when the people can no longer depend upon their institutions to tell them the truth. The institutions of church, the institution of government, institution of business, institution of military, institutions of education. They can't depend on these institutions to tell them the truth, whether they'll accept it and acknowledge it or not. But they know that they can't, right? But the truth has to live. So the truth will therefore come from culture, art, right? And that's the potential that rock and roll always has, right? I mean, all music has it, but rock and roll has it more, because it came with us, but it came with our generation, so to speak, and it had to do with feelings. And there's this on and off struggle always going on within the music industry, because rock and roll truly, the whole thing about rock and roll is it represented feelings, really feelings, not emotions, just feelings. and all the people that it touched and were affected by it. And the music industry, you know, they've always tried to keep a handle on that since then. You know, so we went from Elvis to Fabian, right? Because they wanted to smooth it up. They wanted to polish the edges of the feelings, smooth them down a little bit, right?
Every time they do, though, it breaks out again.
That's right. All right. See, but anyway, it's a constant. It's constantly there, right? Feelings trying to break through in the industry, trying to shut it back down. But that's why I say rock and roll has the potential power.
What about what you're doing, crafting kind of a spoken word performance idea? How does that fit into rock and roll? Is that kind of the same deal?
Yeah. You know, I mean, it's like we look at I don't know, it's just 93, about 10 years ago. I mean, I just got this attitude in my mind, you know, in a lot of ways that I looked around the music and I just felt like it was dying. And I mean, I'm not a musician, right? But I still felt that way, that the music was dying, and that what it really needs is a new infusion of human energy. And I think that poetry, or spoken word or poetry, let's call it both, interchangeable, but they may be two different things at times, right? But so let's say, but I kind of looked at it, well, I thought that spoken word poetry could work with music, but not as soundtrack stuff or voiceover in the music background, but as an integral part of the music, you know, like singing does, like, right? And my feeling has been is that because that would be a new infusion of human energy, because it's got to do with again with feelings and consciousness, but it's blending it with the music. Because, you know, a difference between writing a song lyric, I mean, with writing songs, you write what the music allows you to say, because the music is math. But writing a poem, you write what you want to say. then you make the music compatible.
So are you saying that perhaps music, the musical structure is more restricting, maybe?
Music is very fascist.
Mm-hmm.
The structure of music is very fascist. You know, waltz that one around, right? You know, but you know what I mean.
I think I do, yeah.
Yeah, no, it is, because of the way the numbers and the scales and the notes are. This is what rock and roll. What happened with rock and roll? Rock and roll was taken from blues. The blacks were doing the blues and the gospel music, spirituals, right? But basically, rock and roll came out of that. And what they did what the blacks did with the blues was they changed the math of the music. They didn't have any music teachers, so they just played the music the way it fucking sounded good to them, right? And did things with music, guitars, and pianos that were different than the structure of the music. I mean, they played what felt good to them. They entered the math of the music, right? And then Presley and Jerry Lee Lewis and certain ones of that generation, Buddy Holly and them, they came into contact with this, and then they took it out and interpreted it to the white people.
In fact, they kind of played what they heard in their own way, right?
That's right.
So kind of a chain reaction.
That's right. See, and then energy came in because the fascism and control of music had been challenged, right? And then they found ways to close those doors. But in order to do spoken word or poetry, you have to alter the math of the music again, right? But I didn't really understand that when I was first started doing this. I mean, I understand that now.
So you're talking about Grafitti Man, right?
Yeah.
And then, so is there a new project? Maybe that's what we should get on.
Oh yeah, no, there's I have a new album that I guess is going to be released in January. I mean, yeah, I've been told it will be released in January, and actually, we're quite pleased with it.
What can people expect to hear?
It's a little different from the first album, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that there's more background singers singing harmonies and things, right? And we brought in a little more of the tribal aspect. But it's hard for me to say what people can expect, right? I mean, because we have to put it out there, and then because I think every individual will figure out what's different. It may be different to the different individuals.
Do you feel Grafitti Man connected well?
Yes, I do. Grafitti Man's been very, very good to me. and so I can't have any complaints about that.
What are your live performances like?
I don't know how to describe it. I mean, obviously it's live, so it has a different energy than the studio recorded stuff, right? Because we use a lot of words, but I don't think we go out there and give a performance. You know, it's something else. I wouldn't know how to explain it. because we really mean it.
Uh-huh.
See, when you perform, you don't necessarily really mean it. When you're performing, the character means it, right? But we really mean it.
Uh-huh. So is there some kind of connection here to perhaps tribal ceremonies or something? Is there some kind of ceremonial aspect to it? And I don't mean in terms of wearing costumes and stuff.
Yeah, right. No, I understand what you mean. There could be. Because the nature of what we're doing is to have a two-way communication. And the nature of what we do is to depend upon us, our own energy. And then the instruments are just instruments we use, but we depend upon us, right? Make that communication. And if somebody uses a microphone and vocals, or someone uses a guitar or a keyboard or drums, right? Those are just the tools. So there may be something ceremonial about it.
Is there a certain amount of spontaneity? Do you have a set plan when you go in, or how do you handle it?
This whole thing's spontaneous. Well, we have a lot of songs, right? And so for us, we have more songs than we can perform because of time limitations, right? Generally, what happens is we'll make up the set list. Sometimes we make up the set list the day of the show, if that answers your question. But what we will do is we will rehearse X amount of songs, right, before we go on this, like we're going on this WOMAD thing, right? So we'll rehearse X amount of songs before we leave. And then as we're on the road, then we'll figure out what else we want to do and change the songs, because we don't really care to do the same set night after night after night, because that affects how we mean it. Then it turns into performance sometimes, right? So we have interchangeable songs, and it depends how we feel on any given day, right? And then there are some songs that we will do at every show because we always need it.
So it's flexible, but responsive to the time.
Yeah, it's just a matter of which songs you pull out on it, because, like some of the new material is a little more rocking, right?
Bombs Over Baghdad, for instance.
Yeah.
Oh, the new material, right.
New material, but we have some new materials that touch that vein, Bombs Over Baghdad's vein, right?
That's a cool song, by the way. That's great.
Right on. That was like spontaneous. We just wrote that sucker, right? We got up, just wrote it. But generally, a lot of the pre-show stuff, right? What we do is we don't really. I don't know how other bands do it and how it really works with them, right? But for us, it just we get on the stage, we just know what we're doing. I have a very good band. I've seen us be able to pull it out at times when it was very questionable to me, just because of technical problems or whatever it may be, right? But there's a certain naturalness that we want it to stay with us.
That's good, because people get out there, they get burned out, and rip people off, essentially.
Yeah, I know. It's music industry is a very predatory world, and it really is. And when people aren't really aware of that, or don't really pay any attention to it, or ignore it, or rationalize it, or whatever, then they have a way of ending up passing that predatoriness on to themselves. So it's in many ways, it's a dangerous world.
How do you find WOMAD? You feel that that's predatory? Do you feel they're doing a good thing?
No, I don't think that they're predatory. See, I think that anytime someone puts it upon themselves to go out there and just take culture and art and make a big, let's say, deal out of it, you know what I mean? Then I think that's good. Realities are, you got to charge people money. You have to do this. You have to do that. Or that deal in terms of money and shit like that, right? Those material, structural things, because you can't ignore that. It's there. But I think I think any time that there's a cultural sharing of the arts and culture, I think that it's good. Because no matter, I just think that it's good. Because in however way and manner and fashion for our times, it's a sharing, so to speak.
So what are you particularly trying to bring to WOMAD? Why do you think they invited you? What is your element?
I don't have a clue. I don't have a clue.
Uh-huh.
I would like to think it's because somebody in that group, an organization, understands what it is I'm doing, and they relate. Well, that understands what I'm doing, right? I like to think that's got something to do with it. I don't know what purposes it serves for anyone. The only thing I know that to me it serves the purpose of being able to go out there and do what I do.
Well, I'll tell you, I saw Bob Dylan last night, and it's one of the best shows by him I've ever seen, and it's a testament to poetry not only lives, but it breathes fire.
Yeah.
I'm feeling the same out of your album when I was listening to it. Same kind of deal. So, good luck to you. I'm happy you're on the road, and I'm real excited to see you when you come through.
All right, we'll be